Welcome back everybody to the weekly mailbox, your weekly chance to ask me questions about anything you like. It doesn't have to be motorsport, but generally we focus on Formula 1, Formula E, Formula 2 and any motorsports in between. But if you want to be risky and ask me something random, yeah, that's completely fine with me. We didn't do an episode last week, so apologies for that. We were trying to get out our mid-season driver previews, and also we had the Belgian Grand Prix, and leading up to that, obviously this week we have the Italian Grand Prix this weekend, so of course if you're new, feel free to subscribe and keep your eye out for previews, practice reports and all that goodness for that. But yes, as I just mentioned, we didn't do an episode last week, so these questions, some of them are a couple of weeks old. So this happened before the Belgian Grand Prix, so going through some of them, I thought, well, I can't use that now. We've learned completely different things after Belgium, so apologies if I missed yours out, but of course, I think I try and get a selection of people, so 5 more today, as we do 5 every week, and I think we've got 5 quite good ones, starting with this one from Paul Parry. Question: do you think Sainz is championship material, and how long before McLaren win again? I've changed the wording slightly of this. First of all, so it fits my graphic, but also it was quite long and wordy, but that's the gist of it. Sainz championship material, and how long before McLaren win again? I think the first place I'm going to start with this is the second part of the question, and will McLaren ever win again? Because I think if you've followed me in my channel for the last year and a half now, you'll probably know that I'm very critical of teams that aren't works teams, teams that don't make their own engines. And whilst Formula 1 at the moment I think is converging, we're not quite an engine formula as we used to be. Yes, I think Ferrari have the best engine this year, then Mercedes, then I think Renault and Honda are pretty close this year. But I think all of them, to be honest with you, are pretty even these days, a slight variation perhaps. But not last year, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that's a very different story. So I think maybe McLaren, even with Renault engines, maybe in 2021, if they find some loophole or a really brilliant innovation, could win a race again. They've definitely taken massive steps forward in 2019, so I can see it being plausible. I also think they've got a brilliant driver lineup. And on that note, Carlos Sainz. Well, first of all, McLaren, I think they will win again, but not until 2021 at the earliest. Sainz, I really like Sainz, and I took a hell of a lot of flack last year when I tried to defend him. It's almost flipped around this year, and now I get told off that I don't big him up enough, which I find quite funny. I think Sainz is really good. I think what I like about Sainz is his maturity and his consistency, something that I always bang on about with Nico Hülkenberg. So I think over a season, if you put him in a car good enough, I think he could win a championship. But that's the thing, can he find his way to a championship winning car? I think will be difficult. But yeah, I think he's definitely got the potential to do so. And he's only in his early 20s, Carlos Sainz, maybe 25 yesterday, perhaps? But no, really, well not yesterday, Sunday, 25 I believe, so yeah, plenty of time for him. Sunsense asks, if Albon doesn't perform, will Vettel come back and will Kvyat move to Ferrari? Like this question. Now, he did ask this question before Belgium, but I've still included it, mainly because most of the questions were on Alex Albon and Red Bull. But let's just play devil's advocate a little bit, because I gave Alex Albon driver of the day in Belgium. I think he did a cracking job, especially for his first weekend. Really good job from Alex. But let's just say he doesn't perform. Then who comes in? Because Sebastian Vettel, this weekend, was comfortably beaten by his teammate Charles Leclerc. In a weekend where Ferrari had the best car, Vettel arguably should have been on the podium. I do think it was a little bit down to Ferrari's strategy, to be fair to Vettel, but he wasn't the lead Ferrari at the time anyway. So room for improvement for sure this weekend, and it's been a full season now since he's won a Grand Prix. So I've always said if Vettel does leave Ferrari, if it's this year, if it's 2 or 3 years down the line, I think Red Bull is one of the more likely options for him to go to. Because I don't think he'll get into Mercedes, I think he'll struggle to get there. And I don't see Sebastian as one of those drivers who would really want to take a major step down into the midfield like Kimi Räikkönen did last year. So I think for Vettel, I can see him going back, or at least wanting to go back. But I think for Red Bull, at the end of this year, if Albon's not performing, I don't think they'll bite the bullet and take Kvyat back. I think even Gasly, his performances didn't warrant them to rush him back into his seat. So I personally think if Albon doesn't perform, it's Nico Hülkenberg who's best suited to that seat. Again, like I just said with Sainz, has proved his consistency, has been, I think, a pretty good match to Daniel Ricciardo this year, and has never really had a chance at a top seat. So I think, to me, that makes more sense than bringing in the Sebastian Vettel, which could potentially upset the whole dynamic within the team and upset Max Verstappen. So I think that's the route I would go if I was Red Bull. But of course, I'd love to know all of your thoughts in the comments below, because that's quite a controversial one. But Albon doing a really good job. Sorry, the next question's been up on screen. I was getting a bit carried away there. From in 1998, Abel, will Vandoorne make a Formula 1 comeback? I think it's unlikely. Stoffel has done, I think, a really good job in his first year of Formula E. Raced for HWA. I know quite a few of you don't follow Formula E, at least in that much detail. But raced for HWA. Got one podium in the season, and that was in Rome, the race I got to go to. Really good drive on that particular day. Got a pole position in Hong Kong, which was a wet qualifying session. So really good job in pretty much equal cars, Formula E cars. Although the HWA was one of the worst over the course of the year, so that's good job from me contradicting myself instantly. But the HWA car wasn't brilliant, and I think he did a good enough job in setting up Mercedes for this year, and it seems 95% confirmed he's going to be driving for Mercedes in Season 6 for Formula E. So I think actually, whilst I was a little bit disappointed McLaren didn't keep him on, in hindsight, McLaren have got a brilliant driver lineup this year, and I think they've made the perfect decision. But I also think in hindsight, Vandoorne leaving Formula 1 and going to Formula E with HWA in the Mercedes programme, because, sorry, I didn't really explain that, HWA are turning into Mercedes next year, I think he's got himself in a really good place where he's going to be in a leading team, a team that people want to be driving for, that's going to be fighting for wins and championships. And I think for Vandoorne, he's going to have a better chance at showing off his abilities in Formula E than he would have in Formula 1. And I also think there's not really seats for him in Formula 1. We've got the likes of Nico Hülkenberg, Romain Grosjean, we know how good he is, that are struggling to find seats in Formula 1. So I think it's unlikely Vandoorne will make an F1 return. Only if something major goes wrong at McLaren. I think they might call him back, but very unlikely in my opinion. Right, video screen, a really different and unique question here. I really like this one. What do you think about Q1 becoming a shootout? I'm not too sure if he means Q1 or Q3, but anyway, one hot lap, no second chances, little margin for error. Now, Q1, now I think about it, it probably did mean Q1 because it's a hell of a long session. Not really much happens, to be honest with you. I think it could really be probably taken down to 10 minutes. I think all of the sessions could realistically, I mean, probably logistically, that's probably not possible, and I'm missing something glaringly obvious, like too much traffic being out there. Silly me. But Q1 needs to be changed, I think. It's always the session, I think, well, even, you know, someone like me, who die-hard Formula 1 fan, I'm sure plenty of you guys are, think, oh, maybe I could skip the beginning half of Q1, say. You know, does a casual fan want to sit and watch Q1 for half an hour? I know it's not half an hour. Not really, though, is the answer. So, I think a change needs to be made. I like the hot lap idea. The only thing I'm a little bit cautious of is, over recent years, Formula 1's changes to qualifying have been a little bit too radical and haven't really worked. So, on that basis, I'm not too sure, because I don't dislike quali. It's just that Q1's too long for me. That's the only real issue I have with it. I mean, some people might get frustrated that, you know, it's guaranteed Williams are going out. Lance Stroll, sorry mate, you're probably going out as well. And then 2 other cars, and then that's really it. Maybe that's what people are thinking, and it's usually unlikely. One of the big boys at the front goes out in Q1, so I can see it being interesting, doing a one-shot quali. But then, equally, if you're getting, you know, a little bit annoyed that it's taking too long, watching every single car do one lap takes even longer. So I think in that sense of the word, it will be longer. And now I think about it a little bit more, I'm not too sure it'll work. If it's Q3, maybe that'll spice up the grid. And I quite like the Q3 idea, but Q1, thinking about it now, I don't know. And our final question, our audience participation question, so get ready with your keyboard warriors. Who is the best driver in the midfield? Is the general question. I mean, the question itself came from a couple of weekends ago's video, or weekly mailbox, where I think I said Daniel Ricciardo was the best driver in the midfield. And put it this way, the comments went ablaze with who was the best driver in the midfield. So this time, I'm asking to you straight, who do you think is the best driver in the midfield? Is it Kimi Räikkönen, obviously world champion? Is it some of the young guns, like Lando Norris, George Russell? Is it someone consistent like Perez, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo? I know this is where I get annoyed, because I know people are shouting at me that I've missed someone glaringly obvious. Yes, I know. Romain Grosjean. That's who it was. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below, because even Grosjean, 10 podiums in his career, can't discount that. Can you? I don't know. I'd love to know your thoughts, because there were some really interesting arguments a couple of weekends ago's video. So I think if we really focus on that today, that could be a bit of fun. And I'll join you down there in the comments in a moment. But thank you very much for watching. As always, if you want to ask me a question, feel free to throw it at me, or you can tweet at me as well. Some of you guys have been doing that over the last few weeks, and it's lovely to see. As always, if you're new around here, feel free to subscribe, like the video if you enjoyed. Also, dislike it if you don't, so I know what I'm doing right and wrong. And a very thank you very much from me for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.